Alright, this is good. I've got all three grouped up inside of Venti ult, got an Omen extension going. This will be really quick. Hey everyone, Jinx here. So if you've seen either of my previous two challenge runs, you already know the deal. I used to do a lot of challenge runs back in Dark Souls back in the day, and now I'm doing them in the Abyss 12 in Genshin because I just need something entertaining to do. Give me more content, Mahoyo. But yeah, previous two runs were both duos runs where I only ran two characters on each side to get a 9-star, including one where I did the 4-4-4 challenge where I only used 4 characters who were all 4 stars using only 4-star weapons. Link in the description in the top right if you want to see either of those previous ones, but for this one I'm doing something a little bit different. In this run I decided to see if I could manage to clear the entirety of Abyss 12 with 9 stars and never using a single normal or charged attack. In order to do this, I'd have to figure out comps that don't revolve around the DPS coming from normal or charged attacks. So I decided to run two different swap teams that are both reliant primarily on their elemental skills and their ultimates to do most of the DPS. First off, I decided to run a reverse melt team. This is actually probably one of the most underrated teams in Genshin, especially because it uses 2 free units, and then the 2 other units are units you likely already have. As you'll see over the course of this run, this team puts out some very impressive AoE numbers so long as you can keep playing inside your circles. You can also swap out Rosaria here for Chongyun. You'll lose some damage, but it's not bad. And if you have a Kazuha, you can replace Xiangling with Kazuha in this comp, and it'll in fact run better. I just don't have Kazuha because my dumbass didn't pull for him. The second team I went with was of course Morgana because it's Morgana. My Morgana team struggled a little bit more than my reverse melt team on this content just because the current floor 12 is not super great for Morgana since there are so many enemies that cannot be sucked by Venti. Also, not that it really matters, but I did only use 4-star weapons on my characters for these runs and none of my 5 stars have any constellations activated. Last thing I want to note is that this is the Abyss blessing I had when I completed this run. This is not a terrible Abyss blessing. Most of my characters had at least some attack bonus on their snapshot ults when I popped them, so pretty decent. Definitely not strong enough to carry me through this run, but still help nonetheless. Alright, let's get into the actual run with some commentary. So for this first chamber, we get an attack percent card. Not bad, definitely not a crit card, but still not bad. At this point, I'm just waiting for Bennett's ult to come back up since I used it recently in the last reset. I mess up the angling of this Kaya E here because if you angle it right, you can hit all 3 and melt a Bennett ult onto all 3, but it's alright, not worth a reset. You'll notice the standard rotation for this comp is going to be starting with Bennett, going into Rosaria, going into Xiangling, going into Kaya. If possible, I'll also try to start with some kind of cryo application from Kaya beforehand so that Bennett can melt his ult. Bennett's also running an instructor set to buff the EM of every unit in this team, so it is important to get reactions on him occasionally. Remember that all of these characters have snapshot ults. That means that they use the stats that you have at the moment the ult is cast for the entire duration. So we start with Bennett so that his attack buff from his ult can be applied to every character's ult, and then we use Rosaria second so that the crit rate buff from her ult can be applied to everyone's ult. After that, we use Xiangling's ult because Xiangling's ult and Guaba are the pyro enablers on this team that apply pyro aura so that Rosaria and Kaya's damage can melt. But yeah, that's the basic rotation and concept behind the team. That's really all I had time to talk about with how fast that went. Now for the Morgana half, the challenging part of this is trying to group up the enemies. Now I'm swapping to Mona here because my Mona has a Thrilling Dragon Slayer's book on, so I'm trying to get the buff onto Ganyu and trying to position them into a nice place to pop my ult with the buff up. Now that the enemies are decently clustered, I'm gonna pop my ult. This isn't perfect positioning, but they're close enough to mostly get splashed by everything. Now, Diona is running a 4 Noblesse Oblige, so ideally I do want to pop her ult before Ganyu's ult, but in this case, positioning is more important, so it's more important for me to make sure Ganyu's ult freezes enemies in the cluster. At this point, I'm trying to conserve my ultimates and my energy for the next wave, so I'm just going to very, very slowly kill this Geo bro with just spamming elemental skills. It would be a lot faster if I could just charge shot him with Ganyu, but hey, that's the challenge, right? So even though this is technically a swap team, Morgana's very ult dependent for its damage output, so you can see how long it's taken to kill this guy. Alright, so for this next wave, the squirrels still don't get sucked by Venti ult, but they do Papega at you, so it's easy to control their position just by standing in the center of the Venti ult. This does unfortunately mean that my Venti ult instead is going to be infused with Hydro rather than Cryo. That hurts my damage quite a bit because Venti's ult would otherwise be doing a lot of damage to the squirrel boys, but it's fine. This new Abyss, especially Chambers 1 and 3, are just very big about trying to cluster enemies together and having good positioning, so even if it hurts your optimal DPS rotation, it is a good idea to make sure you keep them clustered. At this point, I am once again very slowly killing this Geo bro with just elemental skill spam because I cannot charge shot on Ganyu. The urge to charge shot on Ganyu is really strong here, but I resist and eventually kill the dude. Now, my Nvidia Shadowplay icon's still in the top right from saving the last clip because I didn't expect to get this in one try, but I did. This is honestly the easiest chamber for me personally. Once you understand the Mangu Kenki's attack timings as well as how to position against him effectively, he becomes a fairly easy but still fun fight. So pretty standard rotation. We pop a Bennett and Rosaria stuff first, that way we can snapshot the attack buff and the EM buff coming from Bennett and his instructor set as well as Rosaria's crit buff on all my characters. Now that we've taken down a good portion of Mangu Kenki's health, he hits an invulnerable phase where he takes no damage, so I'm kind of just standing here waiting for it to end. Now that his invulnerability phase is down, this means that either this attack or the next one is going to have him dash backwards, so I'm trying to position to make sure that his back is against the wall so he teleports into the wall and not too far away. One important note is that you should generally try to use a Rosaria E before you use a Kaya E in a reverse melt team. This is because strong pyro auras like what you get from a Bennett E or a Bennett ult are good for 3 weak melts. However, Kaya's E is considered a strong cryo, so it counts for 2 weak melts. This means if you use Kaya's E first, you're using up 2 out of the 3 weak melts with his E, and Rosaria's second hit on her E will not melt. But if you use Rosaria's E first, then Kaya's E, all 3 hits will be able to melt. I don't know, maybe I'll make a short video about this theme at some point. There's a lot of nuances to optimizing it. Now, I don't quite have full ult going into the 3rd chamber, but that's fine because I still have enough energy to make it work. Now, this chamber is where Morgana shines and is by far the easiest one for this team. I mess up here. I'm supposed to start with Diona's ult and not her E here because it wastes some of the energy, and she also has Noblesse Oblige 4P, so I will be able to snapshot that attack buff on everyone. Also, I'm about to be royally screwed over here because my Diona's E gets tanked by the Ice Cage, which means I don't get any energy from it, so my Ganyu is going to have some difficulty getting her next ult up. Normally, I'd spam Ganyu charge shots here, but I cannot because of the challenge, so I'm just going to set up a Venti ult for the next wave. I actually mess up here. I'm supposed to switch to Mona and use her stuff, not switch to Diona. That way, I could get the damage buff from the Dragon Slayers onto my Ganyu ult while also doing an Omen extension, but I messed up the rotation and I didn't want to waste the energy from Diona's E's. So yeah, don't do what I did just there. That's the wrong way to do this rotation. In this next rotation, I'm also still doing it wrong from an optimal damage standpoint. I should be catching the Dragon Slayers buff onto my Ganyu before popping this ult. I'm honestly not used to running Dragon Slayers on Mona. I normally run something like a Wid Sith or a Favonius Codex, but I wanted to try this different rotation. Anyway, at this point I have plenty of time left, so I'm really just trying to make sure everyone has their ults ready for the next chamber.
Here we go.
And 2 minutes 36 seconds for the second chamber. Probably would have been able to shave off like at least 40 seconds if I could charge out with Ganyu there, but it's alright. Now, this chamber by far took me the longest amount of time because there is just so much AI RNG in terms of where enemies will position themselves and whether you can collateral damage on them or not. So the ideal AI is that when you jump on this Rune Hunter, both of these snakes will jump onto you, allowing you to AoE all 3 down at the same time. Unfortunately, only 1 does this time, but I will say maybe 2 out of every 10 resets both will jump on you, so screw it, I just went for it. Ultimately, both of them jumping on me for this comp only saves me like maybe 15 seconds, so it's whatever, I still had enough time. At this point, I'm saving all of my ults because I know that just my pure swap damage along with Kaya's ult currently being active will be enough to kill this guy pretty quickly, and I want to save my ults for the next wave. Now, note how on this next wave, I am positioning in a very specific place so that when this little triangle boy dashes back, he'll dash towards the other triangle boy. This is really important to keep in mind when fighting the triangle boys because otherwise you're just gonna have to be running across the map and won't be able to consolidate AoE on them. Again, I'm positioning in a way so that when he dashes back, he'll still be right next to the other triangle boy. At this point, I know the other 2 are gonna die from what's on the field already, so I need to focus down this other guy in the back. And even though Bennett's ult isn't up to snapshot on these ults, I'm still just popping all of them because it'll still be faster for killing him than waiting for Bennett's ult. Alright, 1 minute 8 seconds first half, not bad. My fastest time was 49 seconds, but like I said, I was just so tired of resetting for Snake RNG. Now, the same fundamentals of positioning for the Triangle Boys applies on this floor, and positioning in a way to make him dash back towards the other triangle so I can set up a nice Morgana rotation. Then I'm running into the Venti ult. This way I can make sure that the big boy is going to be clustered up with the Triangle Boy. Unfortunately, the second Triangle Boy is still a little bit further out, but there's really no way to cluster all of them together really quickly unless you get super lucky and the other Triangle Boy dashes towards you, which can happen. At this point, I'm positioning so my Venti ult will be centered on the other Triangle Boy in the background because he's the one with the most health left.
No touching.
At this point, I know they're going to just end up dying from this rotation, so I'm trying to funnel energy into my Ganyu to get her next ult up. I do misclick and funnel Diona's energy into Mona, but at least I can catch the HP particles with my Ganyu. Now, I'm going to immediately try to set up another rotation directly onto all three of these targets. The thing about this, though, is that it's pure RNG whether this works. The problem is, if the Rune Grader decides to use this charge attack, there is literally nothing I can do to stop them from spreading out. At this point, since I can't fill the gap with Ganyu charge shots, I'm just trying to keep things frozen with Mona's dash while I wait for Venti's ult to come back up. Now, I do make a really silly mistake here because I end up putting the Thrilling Tales buff onto my Diona instead of my Ganyu. But at this point, Morgana's doing Morgana things, so it doesn't really matter. Alright, 2 minutes and 27 seconds for Chamber 3. I definitely could have saved a lot of time there, at least 20 to 30 seconds if I had reset for the first half's AI, and if I had done my Mona rotations properly on my Morgana team, but I was just really tired of resetting. Alright, challenge completes. This was a really fun challenge, trying to come up with the team comps I needed to be able to do this without normal or charge attacking. It is surprising how much that limits your compositions. Even characters like Geoswap with Ningguang still want you to do charge attacks when you have C6. And of course, you can't use Zhao or Child or Jingqiu, or you can't even use someone like Kazuha because you have to do a dive attack after using his E. But fortunately, both of these teams still function very well with just ability spams. Alright, I'm just gonna let it play out all of the artifacts, talent levels, constellations, stat pages, and everything for all of my characters. I didn't realize until after the run, but I'm actually using the wrong feather on Rosario, which cost her about 6% DPS, but shrug, not a huge deal. Honestly though, in terms of artifacts, I kinda just am running whatever gives them the most damage. Technically, Lava Walker's 4-piece is the best set for both Rosaria and Kaya on this team. However, all of my Lava Walker pieces are trash, and the substat differences I get from everything else I'm running instead just is better. Pretty much the only sets that are like mandatory and you need to run regardless of what your substats look like are running VV4 for Venti, as well as the Instructor's 4 for Bennett, just because you get so much extra damage value out of the EM sharing for the rest of the team, as well as probably the 4 Blizzard Strayer for Ganyu, just because it's really hard for your substats to outdo getting 40% extra crit rate as well as 15% extra cryo damage. I mean, it's possible for an offset with good substats to beat a 4 Blizzard Strayer set, it's just very unlikely. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for this one. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something about how to fight the current Abyss with this, and we'll see you next time. Bye!